All right. Let's see if we're recording. Okay, we're recording. All right. 6. Evaluating geometry. Evaluating geometry for the correctness is an important companion with the build of the real-world models. In fact, without testing the validity of the geometry position and composition of the modeling process, that has not actually been completed. Evaluation is performed following 2 items. Modeling process. After individual logics are built, they organize into the regions. Combination after the model is completely built with the most both cases primary evaluation. Goals are identified. Any error with the measure logic with the input that would make the model invalid with unrealistic. Uncommon error with the evaluation process will reveal the overlapping geometry. Overlaps are the physical violations that occur with the 2 or more objects. The regions occupy the same volume in space, while the condition is occasionally acceptable in the modeling. Error volumes and the create the accuracy with the geometry is later analyzed. Because all the volume within the region considered to be one material, except for the primitives within the region overlap without error. Sphere, the rounding cylindrical heads. However, there's good for the model practice to minimize the weather of the practical and simplified Boolean object logic can keep the primitives as compact as possible. Short shot lining is a principal method of integration of the BurlaCAD razor fired through the geometry to report through the information about the material property, thickness, orientation, objects encountered along the H rays path. See Figure 18 shows. This shows the armor, the rays shot through. It shows the glacis armor piercing, HE round. Firewall, engine starting, transmission sump, fan, rear armor. That's a shot line through a tank, okay? As you can barely see the tank, but like it shoots through the tank and it shows what it hits and the thickness of once again, the part of the material property, thickness, orientation, etc. There are several ways to evaluate with the BurlaCAD geometry. This includes 1, running the image using RT. Checking the overlaps with the RT check with the lesser known as used as G_lint for the MGD's overlap tool. Check for the faulty material composition using or densities using the rendering image weight. Generally, RT weight. Generally, assume that the region is complete with a good practice of ray trace using the RT. This is or the rendering of the image. Always use the visually with verify the Boolean object correctly. Use that the geometry has no obvious problems. This is any of the questionable if it can be examined most closely with a retraceable highlight for the particular area of the note. The rendering is always a good way to compare with the geometry with the drawing, sketch, photograph for the image of the other CAD systems. Subcomponents are organized for the assembly complexity. Geometry increases. If then a good practice for the rendering check or the G-lint overlap tool to help find any of the errors in the geometry, isolate any of the problems. The rendering check, RT check, are a feature for the program run for the MG command line, shell command line for the fires a grid rays through a list of objects or to check with the overlapping geometry. This report with the total count, overlaps, and list of overlap pair for the listing of the path of the regions and the number of overlaps between each pair with the maximum depth of millimeters. The file is by a summary of the tool numbers, overlaps, number of the unique overlapping region pair with the listing of overall overlapping regions. When a run of the MGD overlap is displayed with the geographic display with the yellow lines are created with a temporary database object that are stored in the combination called overlaps FFFF.00 or a hexadecimal notation of what yellow. Note that the temporary object cannot be edited to save the load. It lasts only as long as they have not been erased from the MGD display, but they're not overwritten with any other set overlaps. Every line has been created in the display. The user may use them in the visual reference to the analyze of the overlap. The good practice to erase the geometry top level item and draw with the smaller subcomponents, perhaps just a few overlapping regions to see more clearly where and what problems are. When doing this, note that the Z for zap or B for blast command should note that it should not be used until the evaluator is finished with the yellow lines in the visual reference. This usually should always keep in mind with the rays are difficult to see with the azimuth, elevation, orientation from which they were shot. To see them clearly, one should change the azimuth elevation to another in orientation. To get output of the Figure 20, all assembly will display with the graphics window. Render check and RT check will be typed in the command window. The command check could be run outside of the MGD cab. The command reference render check or RT check is type of the show promptly followed by the file name list of objects to be evaluated. In this case, all note when the running of the render check or RT check outside of the MGD default parameters include the top view with the grid size of 512 to 512 cells, which is difficult size for all rendering operations or RT operations. For more details, set online page on to render rendering. Figure 19, example of overlays, graphic windows. First, checking large assemblies. Why with a relatively low resolution render check. RT check grid size is 128 to 128 pixels. Often there is a sample errors produce larger number of the overlaps, reporting that all take with a long time, starting with low resolution. However, they always use the user to quickly find to eliminate gross errors, proceeding the individual small overlaps using the tighter grid and more specific parameters. Alright, example of overlap repair report in a command window. Another tool can be used with evaluating geometry, especially with the target description of the rendering weight. During the aftermodel of the development of the material code, the effective percentages could be assigned with the appropriate region combination based on the material of the weight of the actual component of the subsystem system. The rendering weight feature could be used to calculate the volume material density provided the overall weight of the model, and this information could be in turn compared with the weight of the actual object that to see with the two masks. If they do not change that there is a model in problem in the model's material property assignments of the construction, hollow components was a model as a solid. For the list of standard material codes and air code, their associated densities. See Robertson ATAL 1996 Warren at 2002. In addition, following some of the general tips regarding evaluation of the geometry in Berlicad. Evaluate earlier and often. As mentioned previously, evaluation should be performed with both an individual object as they are built on section on the bit model and they are assembled. The general problem identified earlier or more easily isolated, fixed, than in the buried and hosted over the other problems. Earlier continuous evaluation can reduce the amount of the evaluation that needs to be done at the end, but the final evaluation ends to help with the ensure the individual piece of the work together in this model. Or evaluate low restriction resolution before higher resolution, especially large complex with models running the rendering check or RT check with high resolution computation time intensive. Therefore, recommended with the modular initially set the low number of the arrays to be fixed with them. Fix any significant overlaps, increase the number of the arrays or zoom in on particular areas. A few overlaps are found. Use the multiple view because of the rendering check or RT check finds overlap with the firing individual rays at the geometry. It may miss overlap the between rays with the viewing of the face edge on with the low obliquity. There is to ensure the highest evaluation accuracy possible within the good idea. The ship of the Berlicad standard view with the top azimuth angle 35, elevation angle 35, etc., as well as for at least one arbitrary randomly selected values of the azimuth 72, elevation 23. For example. If the proper eye point, with impossible to even the misdetection overlaps when the eye point with the middle front with the object of the clipping of the term on. This does not mean with the rendering check with not attaching them. This means that they are not being displayed. So before the evaluation of the run recommended with the zapping or clipping has been turned off. Eye point and the eye point with a sufficient offset with the geometry with the rays to intersect with the entire breadth of the geometry portion of the geometry with the modelers want to evaluate and display. 5. Chunk big problems into smaller problems. Experienced modeler Berlicad now have the killing overlap. Simple part of the modeling process. However, the deal with the large amount of the overlaps can overwhelming, especially for the new modeler who is carefully built each with a piece except with the rendering check or RT check to find a few that, if any, of the problems fortunately, in many cases, which appear with the extensive overlapping might just be one section of geometry wall with the button switch with the slightly open over the position. Simply transition rotation simultaneously. Fix any of the problems. In any other case, overlap with the result of the simple miscalculations of 2-inch, 1.5-inch radius with not likely to be noticed until the position of the surrounding geometry. Wherever the case is to be approached with extensive overlaps, it's not to be tried to fix them at once, but to divide the problem, the smaller problem, to concentrate individual pieces that usually display, help identify and fix error of the example rather than start with the starting with today's engine, then add chassis. One can continue with the process, work up the evaluating of the entire model. 7. Logging documentation.